twice. I walked downstairs and I had little snakes in my
Oh,
garage, probably on three occasions. And me, this is the crazy part. Like you're into semantics and some of the other stuff. Like I had dreamt about snakes. Just one night, I wake up and I'm like, my wife's like, how do you sleep? I'm like, I was dreaming about freaking snakes and just. So I found one in my pool skimmer that had curled up in there, and I was like, oh, "Okay, right here, the way to go, universe!" Right? Thanks for preparing me so I don't panic. So I just took him out in the grass, helped him get uncurled, and sent him on his way. I come downstairs, there's one in my basement. I'm like, dang it, man, are you freaking? I get a little shovel and take him away. And then as it got colder, I found another one. And so I went and re-sealed everything in my basement. So that's why when you started talking, I got to looking like, wait a minute, I haven't looked today to see if I.
where's the snakes?
um,
Yeah. Fortunately, we don't. I'm so high up in the mountains here that there's very few snakes that are up at this elevation because we get snow up here.
yeah,
And not a lot of not a lot of snakes can handle snow.
we
So
at the start of summer, we don't. I've been snake free. At the start of summer, I hear my daughter's going out back, and I hear the doors. All the noises that you're used to hearing, like tink tonk, boom. She screams out this big scream, and I'm like, "All right, here she comes." My wife's like, "What'd you hear?" And I go, "Carousel, run back in." So she comes running back in. She was, "Dad, there's a snake on the porch," and a black snake was right laying in front of our door, and she almost stepped on it when she went out. So I got the water hose and helped nurture him back into the woods. We quit killing. We don't try to kill anything.
no,
Um,
no, no. We where I grew up at in kind of the foothills of California is
yeah,
about 1,500 foot elevation. Um, and they have rattlesnakes.
yeah,
I never had any like on my property, but probably a mile away from my house, I was driving one day and I just saw kind of on a side road. I saw something coiled up, and it was a big, big rattlesnake, and it was going to down to the culvert in between the road and the freeway. There's this steep thing there. So I, I rescue everything, right? you know,
right.
so I stop my car, I put on the blinker lights, and I go over, and I'm stopping traffic, and giving this snake a place to go off where he's supposed to be at. Um, and he was just so cool looking. He was just you know minding his own business, just doing his thing, and I was. So yeah, we had a lot of rattlesnakes where
Have
I
you
grew
ever
up.
you ever seen them strike? Like
Um,
like in person watching them, you walk up on it and you're like, holy crap, and they fire. I watched that a couple years ago. I'll tell you the story real quick and we'll jump on it. The we had this creek where we would have to mow, and we bring in this guy would come and mow, and we do the creek a couple times a year at the shop I worked at. So on Fridays, we always just had to make sure our lot was just, we wanted it to be dressed up, right? So the presentation for us was everything. And so the kid that ran the tractor, I would always go out about 30 minutes, 40 minutes before quitting time and just talk to the guys in the shop, how's everything going, how we look, and just overlook the lot to make sure everything was like we wanted it before we went home on Friday. And that guy just mowed. So me and him were walking over to the edge, and I was like, son, I'll tell you what, today is the best day of my life because this lot is the prettiest. And about as I'm getting that out, I see that sucker curl back and it fires and hits him in the steel toe boot.
oh,
And before I could get out, hey dude, we need to move. It hit that steel toe boot again. And I end up just grabbing him and running with it. I end up grabbing the kid and running with him. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's a freaking snake hitting your boot. Oh man, it was neat. It scared the crap out of me. But it was, now looking back on it, everybody was okay. But watching that thing engage and
oh
how it
yeah.
just how fast and fierce that they strike.
There was a story of they did a little documentary on it about a girl in the Grand Canyon that her and her family always went down to the Grand Canyon, and she's down there by the stream, kind of off away from folks, and she just just feels this pain in her foot, And so she said, what just happened? So she takes off her boot, and she's got what looks like a bite mark. Well, long story short, she's just gets worse. It just gets worse throughout the day. And the next morning she wakes up and, her thing, like she can't walk out of there,
Yeah.
her foot's so swollen up. And what it was a small rattler had just got one tooth in her shoe. And, yeah, they ended up helicoptering her out of there in a sling, which she thought was the coolest thing ever. You
Yeah.
can imagine getting helicoptered out of the Grand Canyon in a sling. What a ride that would be.
Well, let me tell everyone who I'm talking to. And folks, we're not here talking about snakes today. It's just how me and Jason's conversation started out. Um, we started talking about snakes, and I'm not a snake person. He is, and he was educating me, and we got to sharing stories there as we were coming up live. But um, today's guest is someone who sits right at the intersection of science, faith, and freedom. And I wanted to pause there, man, because that's really cool. I was reading about you, learning about you, but science, faith, and freedom. I think it's really, really a cool sentence there, and I'm excited to unpack that. Jason Munson is an entrepreneur, investor, and certified neurochange solutions consultant who's helping people rewire how they think so they can show up differently in life and leadership. He runs a renewable energy e-commerce business, but more than that, he's a dad, a husband, and a man in a powerful season of expansion. Jason believes that we're not stuck. We're just wired that way. And if we change how we think, we change how we live. Couldn't be more excited, dude. I'll tell you why. Last
That
night,
sounds pretty good.
yeah, dude, last night, I had it pulled up. I was just sitting here looking at it, but before I do bios on the morning of and just kind of go
Okay.
through. And yesterday, and over the weekend, I had created um, a blog and some content and something I was working on the law of words and what words you say and how they shape you. And then I got to read it and I was like, well, holy crap, man, this is perfect timing to have probably a expert on the show today to talk about this. And I love this work. It's absolutely helped transform my life. It spoke to me when other things that didn't. Throughout some of my struggles and life, and things and just processes started making way better sense as soon as I start learning about the work like you do. And I'm excited to share more of that with the rest of the world. So tell me this, man. I teed you up there, but tell me what a day in your life looks like.
Okay. Yeah. So I think life is just this constant process of transformation. At least that's how it's turned out. For me, is I forget who said it, but he said that he was actually talking about traveling on a sailboat with your spouse. And people have like this dream about getting on the sailboat and going sailing across the Pacific or going in the Caribbean or something like that. And he says that when you finally get there, you find that there is no there, just yourself. And I found that so many times where it's like I've gone on these great passive expansion, and then plateaued for a period of time and everything seemed good, and then things like kind of start not doing so well, and then it's like, oh, there's this whole nother tier that I'm going on. So I'm really excited right now because I'm in one of those expansion times, where I find myself kind of doing this little test of, I used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I started like kind of getting up at 5:30. Then I'm kind of like, 5:15. It's like I keep on inching the alarm clock because I'm just kind of refining this, where my brain is ready to go and where it's ready to wake up and go. But no matter what time that is, I'm always doing the same thing. Um, I really believe in what Jesus said. He said when he said, "Put the kingdom first, and all these other things will be added to you." So I go out and after I just get a glass of water and poke my head outside and get a breath of fresh air. I live up in the mountains up here in Lake Tahoe, so it's just absolutely breathtaking every time you walk out. And then I go sit on my couch and I put on a pair of noise canceling headphones and a pair of eye shades, and I just start praying. And um, I just, at this point right now, I can get up around an hour, before I'm done talking to God about everything that I want to talk to Him about, you know. And so, and then from there, I'll usually do like another hour guided meditation. So, the first 2 hours of my day are spent talking to God and connecting with, with the field, connecting, um, with the quantum. And then I get into doing some reading and doing some studying and stuff like that. I'm all about, taking care of yourself first. This morning was a little bit different. My wife and I decided to get up at dawn, and we live about a mile from the beach, and so we grabbed our paddle boards and went down to the beach and went paddleboarding out on the lake, and connected, with each other over things and talking about some of our frustrations in life, and how things are not working out, the way that we had expected them to or wanted them to, and kind of wondering how long that's going to last for. So I really believe in, and just taking care of myself, first, and being flexible, also being flexible with that time to be able to, to do what's important. And then, beyond that, I just kind of getting past eating a healthy breakfast, and getting into my workday and seeing what that looks like. Today I met with a local company, and um, met with the ownership there. And, after we talked for, a little while, he says, so he says, what do you want to do here? Like, and I just said, you know what? Why don't you give me your biggest problem and I'll solve it for you? And I just like the words just kind of came out of my mouth without like really thinking about it, because I think that's a lot of times what what business owners want, is that they always have this thing that's hanging over them, or their frustrations that they're dealing with. And I find, like, working with as a business consultant, work with companies, a lot of times the question I'm just trying to figure out is what is your biggest pain point? Like, what is bothering you the most? And how can I help? And how can we help that? A lot of times when people are suffering, or they're stuck in what they're doing, it's because they're having the same thought about the same situation, and they just keep on repeating that same thought. And as long as you're thinking the same thought about the same situation, according to the model of human behavior and neuroscience, is same thoughts are going to produce the same choices. The same choices are going to produce the same behaviors. Same behaviors are going to produce the same experiences or the same results. And those same results are going to produce the same emotions, which are going to go back and influence those same thoughts. And we, as human beings, we run through this cycle, of of thoughts, choices, actions, experiences, and emotions. We keep on just running through these cycles, constantly. And this is what produces our life. It's what produces our personal reality. And what what my job, part of my job is, and part of your job as well, is like, you have to get people to think new thoughts about the very same circumstances that they're having, the very same situation. If they think a new thought, then it opens up a whole new level of possibilities to them. And we get stuck I get stuck in my patterns. All of us do. We get stuck in our patterns. We get stuck in our habits, and we need that spark. We need something to come along and to get us out of that. And I think the more often that we have those situations, when we're able to take action on them, the better progress that we make in life, and the better people we become, and the better servants we become to others. The more value we provide, and the more value we provide, the more we get paid ultimately.
You, my buddy, Cashflow Mike frames up when you go into businesses like that is sometimes we go in with problem we see, not the problem they feel.
Mm.
And the way you approach that allows them, like, I can tell you a bunch of things we can fix, but what's bothering, what keeps you up at night? What's when you ask that business owner of sitting down and just saying, I can deliver content on whatever, this is things I saw or just didn't walk in, but what is the things that are keeping you up at night that's making you worried? That's what we want to fix. Then we can work on the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, coming into an organization or a business and being a trusted advisor rather than a salesperson, it's two completely opposite approaches. It's like I'm gonna walk, you know, I could walk in and say, hey, I'm going to sell you a copy of my book called Rewire for Common. Let me tell you all about it. It's going to help you to, get out of the stress cycles and get some explanation about, what stress is and why it's bad for you and what can you do about it. And here's some great tools and tips and some breathing exercises and different things you can do. I come in like that. Are you inspired to buy my book, Jeff?
That's right.
No, no, not really, but it's like if I come in and I say, and I, ask the question, say, so what's the biggest challenge that you're having with your business? I don't know that I can even solve it. I'm not sure if I'm your guy at all, but if I can understand a little bit more about what you're going through, you know, maybe I could help, or maybe I can direct you, into the point or to the person who can help you. So, you know, tell me more about what you're dealing with. And people want to talk. People, it's one of our primary needs as human beings is we want to be heard. And so when you get somebody there that's really wanting to listen to what's going on with you and asking more questions to really get the understanding of it, that's the best like rapport building strategy that you can do. And one the guy who had a real big impact on me, he won't talk about his product at all. He'll just talk about their thing, and he'll once he really gets them connected with their pain, with what's really causing them the problem, he'll ask this question. He'll say, so, and it's just so I have a magic wand here. I have a Disney wand. He'll say, so if I could just wave a magic wand and fix this for you, how would you have me fix it? And when he first told me that question, I'm like, what a genius question. Because now they're telling him how they want to be sold. And then he just asked the question, okay, I think we could probably do all that. What kind of budget do you have for this? Is this a $5,000 to $8,000 problem, or is this an $18,000 to $25,000 problem? He has them tell them their price, you know. And it's like, okay, I think we can do this. It's going to take this amount of time. You've got the budget to do it, and we can probably start on it next week. Get you going. How does that sound? And they say, great. He hasn't even shared with them what his product is. He just sold them on the solution. So I think really, really, really great, advisors, really great advisors know how to do that, really well.
I
And
teach at Jason. I also teach. I try to teach folks in retail or whatever it might be, product services. I teach that same thing. Sell the outcome. Sell I own a gym, and it's easier in fitness. Like, hey, in 6 months, I want you to close your eyes in 6 months, and you're going to be in that outfit that seems a little tight right now, and you're going to be at at your favorite dance, or you're going to the favorite your date night. It's going to
right,
be a little bit right. You're at the beach, right? So we're able to do that. But I also apply that in other areas of just when you're selling something, like sell it from the standpoint of the problem it solves. Not that's just I think it just leads to the simplicity. It's a great understanding. It's not over salesy, and it creates connection and buy-in from. So I could totally see in that just being an amazing close. Magic wand's a good one. I use that in law enforcement. The magic wand will take you a long way in confessions and law enforcement and things along those lines too. So that's a good one.
yeah, I knew what, and this really goes into the neuroscience behind what you're actually doing there. Whether it's getting somebody to buy a coaching program or getting somebody to to join your gym. when you're asking a person to live into a future, think about what it's going to be like, when you're able to get in that dress, or you show up at your daughter's wedding, or whatever the outcome is. First you gotta find out what the outcome is. So what is which is, I'm sure such a great question, as somebody who's interested in the joining the gym. It's like, what are you here for?
Yeah.
What are you here to get? And then saying, okay, so I want you to think about what it's going to be like, 6 months from now, when you're on that vacation with your husband for your anniversary, and you're in that bathing suit. What is that? I want you to think about that. And then the next question is, how would it feel? How does it feel to be there? And so this is where we're getting the neurology of the brain involved. So you're actually getting the person to build a neurological network inside of their brain for something that hasn't happened yet. You're creating a memory of the future. And that's really powerful, because the brain can create that memory of the future, but every time they think about that future event, and they feel the emotion inside their body, of what it will feel like. Our bodies are so objective that they don't know the difference between the actual experience and the experience that we're imagining inside of our heads. We actually feel it as if we're already there. And that gives some feedback to the brain that says, I'm feeling this as if it's already happened. And our brain and our bodies are so objective, they don't know the difference between the actual event and the future event. And so then the brain starts going to work and saying, wait, there's some discrepancies here. I need to make some different choices. I need to make some changes. And so our subconscious then starts going to work on us. And this is where we'll have those, we'll have those moments where, like, oh no, wait, oh no, I can't go do that. I'm supposed to be at the gym. Oh no, I can't eat that. That doesn't fit. That doesn't fit the meal plan or the diet that I need to stick to. But it's more than just the memory. It's combining the memory and the emotion, the stimulus and the response together. When you have those things working together with the brain and the body, we start programming our brains and our bodies on a subconscious level to start doing the things that we need to do to get to the place that we want to be, because we've already fallen in love with that future event. So whether you're doing a workout, or somebody's got to revise their financial plan, or they've got to have a different result with their employees, the methodology is all the same for getting there.
We overlook that, and that's, that leans in hard to eliminating negative self-talk. And that's like that article that I did. It was kind of born out of when I sat down with a business owner, and Jeff, I'm just not making any money. And generally, as soon as that why rolls out, I can tell that it's not the business. It's their relationship with money. It's their, like, well, I'm not, I'm just not good at my business finances. And I was like, well, hold on here. Today we're going to start doing this a little bit differently. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, we're going to say that you're here today to get advice on your business finances. So here's what we're going to say: that you're working hard to learn more about business finance. So let's start there, and then tell me, and I generally have, do you think money's scarce? Do how was you brought up? Is money not grow on trees in your household? And we work through some money mind blocks. And finally I can get down to, it's like, well, they don't charge enough. They're just basically afraid to charge more because they're of the uncertainty of, there's just not enough money in the world. How are they going to be able to afford me? So that's, I kind of keep pulling back those layers to get to that part of the conversation, to say, okay, hey, let's spend some time working here, and let's improve your relationship with money. And what if I told you that there's money's everywhere. There's plenty of money for everybody. It's just you've gotta turn the right valves here in your brain and your mind to where it'll start flowing to you, because everything you're doing is kind of pushing it away. And then we can work on the systems and processes in your businesses. If we don't fix this area, all we're going to do is block all the money from coming in, because you're not going to be able to manage it, type thing. Is that similar to the work like you're talking with there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're dealing with the persons with their beliefs and their biases, right? And where do they learn that from, right? They
Yeah.
learn that, from the experiences in their life, previous experiences
Most of
that
the
they've
time,
had.
Joe, Jason, not to interrupt you, but most times some of the most trusted people, a mom, a dad, a very influential person, that this is the way they told me, this is the way it is. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's the other part to add in, is it's not just coming from a friend or a random stranger. It's someone that's valued.
Yeah, it's somebody that they trusted. Just I don't know why this is coming up for me, but in I think it was Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point, um, and which actually he went back and later on said a bunch of it was nonsense. But there was one point in there that I liked, was he talked about people who smoked, um, and interviewed people who were smokers, and he said and the question was, why did you start smoking? And almost every single time they say that there was somebody in their life that was cool, that smoked, and they wanted to be like them. So whether it was a family member or somebody in school or a cousin or something like that, is like that they wanted to be like that person, so that's why they started smoking. And so we could, you do that of getting that emotional payoff of like, well, I want to be cool like they are, right? You're doing it in an unhealthy way. But we'll do the same thing with money. As we'll say, oh, usually money is not about being cool as much as it is about being safe, and having the security that money brings. And if you grow up in an environment where when people don't have money, they suffer, and when they have money, they feel good, then you get taught on an unconscious level. You get those neural networks inside of your brain that are all firing off together, that have these beliefs about money, and we go off into the world, operating under those beliefs, under those assumptions, under those biases. Problem is most of our beliefs, biases, and assumptions are not true. So you got, the guy you're coaching in the business, and you unwrap those layers, and you find out that there's these beliefs about money, and these beliefs aren't even true. They're just something they got taught to them by somebody that they loved, or that they cared about, or who loved and cared about them. So the process of developing a new belief system, that's hard, because when you've been thinking a certain way for a really long period of time, you have a habit of thought. You're not even thinking about what you're thinking about. It's just happening. So to introduce a new thought, about money, for your client, is difficult to do. But when you add that component, if they can fall in love with the result associated with that new belief, and get the emotion involved there, that has a real powerful effect on getting people to change. But I love what you're doing there, and I think that what you're describing is really a fantastic skill. Being able to coach people in business is to look beyond the surface and find out what's really going on underneath. What is really driving people's behavior.
When you when you get into the work that you do, and we're explaining using kind of that scenario and others that may be better fit for here, but we always you use the terms, you're not stuck, you're just wired that way. But that's all. I mean, that's, we hear that say. I'll use another example in kids athletics. My both my kids are heavily into stick and ball, and sometimes that stick is struggling to find that ball, and you'll hear in the stands, "Oh yeah, she's in her head, or he's in his head." And I went, "Oh, hold on here, all right, how do we get them out of there?" Right? It's like, so it's going, speaking into what you're saying, you're just wired that way. But can you break down that rewiring process that you use and what that looks like practically for someone that's listening to kind of help guide them on that?
Sure. Well, I think the first step is determining what's not working, for you. And sometimes that's where you need, a Jeff in your life, as somebody who can see your blind spots and to say, hey, this isn't working for you. And and some of that really has to do with results because we'll trick ourselves into believing that everything's okay. You know, you'll have a lot of, you kind of using the gym metaphor is that you'll have a lot of people that will convince themselves that obesity is okay, that it's not dangerous for them. And there's a lot of reasons and causes by why people get there, to the point where they're obese. But you sit down with with any doctor, any health professional, and they will tell you it's dangerous for you. So but until you kind of get to that point, where you say, okay, now I've got to do something about this. My belief has changed about my circumstance, my situation, that this is no longer okay to stay this way. So now I've identified, something that I need to change about myself. And then it's about identifying what are the thoughts that are around that thing. What are the actions and behaviors that a person is taking? And then what are they feeling when they do that? The feeling is the payoff, right? We're all going for this emotional payoff. It's the emotion is a chemical that gets produced inside of our body. And those chemicals that we describe as emotions, they're highly addictive. You know, we don't do anything for nothing. We're always looking for that emotional payoff. So first is to identify thoughts, actions and behaviors, feelings that are associated with the old behavior that I no longer want to, that's no longer serving me. It's not getting me the result that I want to get. Well, then you have to identify, okay, if that's true, then the other side of that is, how do I want to think? What actions do I want to take? And how do I want to feel? And getting really clear on those. And a process that we do, we actually have people, we'll have them write that out every single day. What is the old personality that I am retiring? And what is the new personality that I am taking on? And what is it like to be this person? And I'm going to go have the thoughts, actions, and feelings of this new person today. And when we do that, we start rewiring our brains to become this new person. And then when we stop engaging in the old thoughts, actions, and feelings of the old personality, our brains start to actually prune away the neurological networks that are associated with that old personality. And over time, it's easier to resist being that old person, and it's easier to become this new person. We're developing a new habit, a new set of beliefs. We're setting up new conditioning inside of our mind that gets us to be this new person. And this old personality eventually just fades away. It just doesn't have the grip on us like it used to. And for me, I believe that life is just this process of taking on the new and leaving off the old, identifying who we need to become and who we need to leave behind. Um, and it's hard and it's challenging and it's frustrating, but that's how we grow into becoming, better people. And it's how I'm trying to help my sons now. They're 14 and 15 years old, you know, to gravitate on to, no, you're not stuck. No, your brain is wired a certain way, but that's not finite. Who you are can change, you know, and it's just a process of being able to do it. But once you know how to do it, you can replicate it. You can replicate that process throughout your life, and you can make it easier for yourself to be able to become that new person that you want to become. I feel like I'm
It's,
rambling.
no, dude, I can listen to it all day, man. You're spot on. Um, your son is my son approaches things differently. Um, we got to see Bristol. We went to I'm 3 hours from Bristol Motor Speedway, so I went to saw a Braves and the Reds game inside the racetrack over the weekend. I don't know if you keep up with baseball or anything. It's a big deal. It's supposed to be like 94,000 people there to break a MLB record, and I'm working just customer service and flows, and I have an understanding of when something's a little amiss in business. And so they had just way too many people in an area. It rained. They didn't have enough food. So I was just listing because I'm actually working on a pretty, um, I'm working on one of my next workshops will be on just delivering excellent customer service. So I was mentally making a note everywhere I walk in, and I was telling him about it coming up the road, and he was like, and he helped me reframe that, and he goes, I said, listen, man, these right here. I said, I feel like I'm griping here, and he was like, yeah, you are, uh, and I go, I was just pointing it out. And he goes, Braves won, Dad. So it's all that matters is the Braves won,
Praise one.
and life is good. And that was when he said that, I was like, man, it's just he really, because and I told him, I was like, listen, I'm not trying to live in the negative here, because it was a such and what I realized was I was anchoring what's supposed to be this really cool father son moment of going to this event that may be a once in a lifetime moment for both of us. And I was putting all the negative stuff on Front Street. And he was like, he was he overlooked every bit of that. Just even for he was like, "Hey, we got to go to a really cool place and watch a cool baseball game." And it rained, like we had to go back the next day, and we spent whatever. But he was just like, "Yeah, no big deal." And so that really helps me sometimes, because his my influences over the years were different, and and just how I teach and all those things. So I was very appreciative to the as you said, you were mentoring your kids. I'm very appreciative when my kids mentor me.
Yeah, they
Because
how old
here's
are your kids?
Jason, I tell you that to tell you this, because I've got 50 years of positive and negative influences, and
Mm.
my whole goal when they came along was not to let any of those negatives over influence them. And it was just really cool that he's able to turn it around when I get in. If I go back too far and start pulling on old influences, those guys are able to stop me and kind of help get me back into the positive. So it's really, really neat to watch that happen over the weekend.
How old are your kids?
15 and 13.
15, 13. Okay, I got 14 and 15, so
Yeah.
we're right there
Yeah,
together
right
on
there together.
that ride. Yeah, so yeah, the this age, I reflect back on my dad, and and kind of seeing like where I'm at with my kids. And um I just remember reading in a book one time is that at this age our kids can become very critical of us, of the things that we do, the habits that we have, the things that we've done, things we haven't done, because they see it through, different eyes, and so I think it just for me it just requires a lot of humility, of saying, all right, th- this this is what's going on, and this is where I'm at with this, and I'm not doing this all the right way all the right time, and I appreciate you being patient with me,
Yeah,
you know
big deal.
because man, there's I was my oldest, he's so smart, he's so smart, he recognizes,
Yeah,
and it's so frustrating to him, so just having that humility is as a parent with teenagers is it's the only way I know how to do it, and I think sometimes the only way I can get through it.
yeah. I mean, I'm very as they've gotten older, like very transparent conversations. Like sometimes I've set them down and said, "Listen, y'all, you guys are raising me. Y'all don't understand this, but you all have raised me to higher levels than I ever could have without y'all." But and I have them raise their hand. And I go, "How many of you have had a dad before?" And they both look at me like, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Because this is my first time having kids." And I don't know if they all know this or not, but it's not like buying a car. I can't go to the glove box and pull out the manual. So we're all figuring this out together. And that started from me just kind of listening them up on their phones and just taking pictures and group text. And I'm like, you guys are exposed to way more. In order for me to communicate back in yours age, I had to mail a letter. The internet hadn't quite come around then, but I'd have to mail a letter, fold it up, whatever. If I wanted to send someone a selfie, that meant I took a picture with a roll of film, sent it off. It was developed in 14 days and sent back to me. Everything they do is instant. So that's kind of where we're, I was like, listen, we're all figuring this part out together, but here's how I think just best practices of how I would like to see this evolve. And um, I think it creates more buy-in. What the one thing I wanted to ask you before we get out of time was the faith meets neuroscience part, and how you integrate the two. You talked about your morning routine of prayer and meditation, and your heart space alongside your brain science. But how do you blend your spiritual alignment, mental rewiring into the work you do with clients?
That's a really great question. And I'm not the Christian neuroscientist, you know, um, where some people are really upfront, with with their faith, pushing that first. Um, and I and for you know I the guy that I've learned from working with Dr. Joe Dispenza. You go to one of his events, and he'll have 2,000 people from all over the world, and there'll be 87 countries represented in that room. 80, so likely 87 different religions, at least. And one of the things he says, the second that you bring up religion or you bring up politics, you divide the room. And he is so masterful at talking about God without dividing people.
Yeah.
And the way that he'll do that is he'll say the divine. When he's referencing God, he'll say, so the divine, or the divine in you, or your connection to the divine. And most people don't have a problem with that. Yeah, because you'll have full on in the audience, you'll have full on atheists. You'll have you'll have um, some really scientifically minded people, that are very much believe in evolution, and they discount the idea of God and a creator. But most people don't have a problem with this idea of a divine, that you're recognizing that there's some level of power that's greater than what you are, and we're kind of like experimenting with this relationship, and how it relates to our neurology, and how it relates to our biology. So um, the Bible talks a lot about the heart, and in the study that I've gotten to do, we find out a lot about that the heart is an energy center inside the body. It has scientists just show our hearts. You take your heart out of your body, it'll beat in your hand, because it has electronic impulses that are causing it to do that. The electronic impulses are what are causing that muscle to do it. So whenever you have an electronic signal like that, it creates a field, creates an electromagnetic field. We can measure that electromagnetic field 9 feet out of the body. It's hugely powerful. And so when you have so when the Bible is talking about like the heart is the seat of motivation, and out of it are the sources of life. And then we find out that the heart actually has neurons inside of it, and there's more connection there's more information being sent from your heart to your brain than there is from your brain to your heart. It's actually speaking to you. And then you have these other parts of our bodies that also have these neurons. Say you have a gut feeling. Well, there's another energy center. There's another electromagnetic field inside of this part of your body. You can measure it. It's scientific. This is not the woo-woo clan here. These are things that are actually measurable, and determining how these energies interact with each other, because then we also have these different energy centers inside of our brain that are also measurable. So when you know when I read the Bible and I'm studying faith and I'm reading about the heart, reading about the brain, so I'll give you an example. So the Pharisees asked Jesus, say, hey, what is the greatest law? What is the greatest of all the laws? What is the number one law? And Jesus says to love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, and your whole mind. Right? It was a whole soul, your heart, soul, right? Did I get that right? Whole heart, whole soul, whole mind.
I've
Right.
always
So
heard it heart, soul, and mind.
yeah, heart, soul, and mind. Okay.
I think you're spot on.
So I want to make sure I got it right. So so just talked about that energy inside of your heart. That is your motivation, your emotion. Okay. Well then, your mind. So we starting heart. We're talking about biology. We're talking about our mind. We're talking about neurology. When we're talking about soul, we're talking about the energy of the body, like that actual energetic force, that, the life force that's inside of us. So studying neuroscience and studying biology and like getting into, the details of like what is actually going on inside of us, on a science level, it just it opens up this whole new door of understanding to what the Bible is talking about when it's speaking about these different aspects of our body and of our personality, of and in science, in the work we do, we talk about coherent energy versus incoherent energy, and we can measure it. We can put I could put an EEG, I could put an EEG on your heart, and we can put that information up on the graph there, and we can see when your heart is beating coherently in love and in gratitude, and then we could change you over to emotion and anxiety and fear, and we can watch your heart rate change into incoherent heart signals. We could do the same thing with electroencephalogram. We can put this, we can put that brain thing on you there, and we can measure all your brain waves. We can measure your beta, your alpha, your theta, and your delta brain waves, and we can see your brain waves operating in coherence when you're thinking positive thoughts and you're feeling the positive emotions, and you see these energies start to sync up together. You got coherent heart, coherent brain, and then what people are able to do when they are in that space, and the change and the impact that they have on other people when they're in that space. So anyway, you'll get me going here, man. I just,
That's good.
there's for me, they're inseparable. To me, they're inseparable.
There's another. I came out of EMS as well, so the heart, the rhythms, EKG, um, that normal sinus rhythm, that drop, that boop, that you see on TV, folks. There's another. Um, I'll send it to you, and it is leaving my mind. I hate to even bring it up, but there's another rhythm in the body that's like mimicking that pattern of energy, the electricity. And when they hooked it up, or it came from something, they were like, "Oh, this is the same as like a person's heartbeat. It follows that same cadence of that electrical." But it may have been. They found some new, they call it a heart in your calf. I saw something the other day where they had found a new muscle that mimicked it had some electrical activity that was in your calf. And it caught my eye because my calves are massive and they hurt my shins all the time if I don't stretch good. So I was like, calf, and looking for like, oh, I got a heart in my calf now. That's even more reason that I'm going to be miserable sometimes. Tell me, we're right on top of time, but I had just a couple things I wanted you to unpack for me real quick. Tell me about the book and why folks should read your book, and what all that helps folks find clarity in. And then I wanted to know how people can connect with you and kind of those clients that you serve. But tell us about the book real quick, or take as long as you need.
So Rewire for Calm, how to break the cycles and stress and thrive. Goes into what you have talked about here, is that uh, we go into stress as actually becomes a habit. It becomes a conditioning. Where things happen inside of our lives that cause us to go into stress, and some of them are very predictable. So the first part of the book is going into why is stress bad for you, and how does it affect your brain and your biology, and and how does that actually make you sick? Physically make you sick. What is the relationship between stress and disease? and why is this, why is this bad for you, and what is it doing to you? So that's kind of the, the first part of the book. The second part of the book is talking about, how do we get out of, well, first of all, how do we avoid situations? So if you can predict the stressful situation is going to happen, then you can also choose your response to it. We don't have to get angry, upset, and anxious about everything that happens in our life if we know it's going to happen. We can actually choose our response. But for the situations that we can't choose our response, the trick is, how do we get out of stress faster? Things will happen to some people, and they will live with those stressful emotions for years and for decades. They keep on replaying that event that happened to them, whether it was with, a parent, or with, with a relative, or they got into a car accident, or, they made a bad decision, whatever. They'll replay that same situation for years and keep those same stress chemicals being brought up inside their body. And those, then, later on in life, they're dealing with, different types of diseases that are related to that stress, and they thought it was what they were eating. It's like, well, no, it wasn't what you're eating. You put yourself into stress for 20, 30 years, fixating upon that damage that somebody did to you. You shut down your digestive system, and you can't digest any food, and now you have stomach cancer. Okay, there's the lines are starting to be drawn more clearly to what happens to people in stress. So, the book gets into, what can you do about it? Identifying when you're in stress, and then what actually, can you do about this? We transfer this over into businesses and organizations. If you have a culture of stress inside of a business and organization, people get very narrow focused, and it shuts down their creativity, and they're not very good at solving problems or identifying opportunities inside the company. And you'll see businesses lose money this way when you have people that are in high stress organizations. It's crippling the business, and you'll have people who show up in their jobs. Number one, they'll be there, but they've already quit in their mind,
Yeah.
and they're just looking for the next thing. And they will show up, and they will do the minimum amount of work that they have to do in order not to get fired. And you'll see the symptom is the increase in sick days.
Yeah.
They will take all of them. People who are in love with their job, they hate getting sick. They hate taking time off because they love what they do. And when you have thriving companies that are low stress, that are high in creativity, you don't have high sick days. People only show up when they really are genuinely concerned that they're going to give somebody else a cold or something like that. So that's the work a lot of the work that I do in businesses is define, like, what is the problem inside the culture, and what are the symptoms of that, and how do we help the culture to change the way that they're thinking about that circumstance so that they can produce a different result. And usually that's tied to the bottom line of how much money the organization is making. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can get right on my calendar you go to meetwithjason.net. Meetwithjason.net. You can get on my calendar that way. If you want to find out more about the training that I do, and that I, find out some more information about me, you can go to neurolinkers.com.
Ideal client that you would like, hey, if you're in this, do you have an ideal client avatar that you like to put out there, or just you're open to anybody who's looking to work with Jason?
Yeah, because I teach on neuroscience, I tend to work more with people that are in medicine.
Yeah.
So that just seems to be the clientele that's more attracted to me is, so working with nurses, hospital administrators, usually people that are in HR, because people in HR, they see the problems that are going on inside the organization that a lot of time the management can't see, and being able to tie high stress to low performance that's affecting the bottom line of the company. Sometimes senior management can make that connection when it's coming up through HR manager, but department heads of hospitals that have budget for hiring, training, and stuff like that. But the other one I started working with is with nonprofits. We're working with the local CASA, which is an advocate for young people going through the juvenile justice system that need a mentor along their way. Also living with a organization here that helps women that are in violent situations, violent relationships. Work with those organizations because their teams and their leadership really needs to be having a strong, cohesive culture, and that's the thing that we provide. And it connects me to the businesses and organizations that are supporting those organizations. So
You're available nationwide or worldwide. You're not just confined into your Lake Tahoe region. To
nope,
you,
nope. The
you,
quantum field connects us all. So
that's right. That's making
so no,
sure.
yeah, mostly work in the United States, but
Yeah,
we have the consultant group that I work with. We're all over the world. We're in Africa, Dubai. We're all over. So
man, it's really cool. I love the work. Absolutely cannot thank you enough for spending an hour talking snakes a little bit, but
yeah,
teaching me a little bit about snakes, but then let me just give me the opportunity and the folks that will hear this over as time goes on, and hopefully, I believe in this work. It's absolutely been life changing to me. It's a different approach. I found myself beating my head against the wall and way too long. And once I started the work that you do kind of opened up some new doors for me and helped me find some clarity in my own life. So I really appreciate you just taking time um, to let us get to know you, dude. Welcome back anytime. Hopefully, come back with a case study or whatever you'd like to unpack. And but just let me know anything that me and my group can do to support you, my man.
sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeff.
All right, appreciate you.